Chief guest of today's event, Dr. Bhekh Bahadur Thapa. And dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the book release and the joint webinar of Center for Diplomacy and Development and Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement on challenges of Nepal's foreign policy. Center for Diplomacy and Development is a non-profit, non-political, and non-partisan social organization registered with the government agency. It was established in February 2018 as a think tank institution on the track to diplomacy, with an objective to work in the fields of diplomacy and development issues. Our promoter stakeholders come from diverse background, that is diplomacy, education, journalism, law, management, public service, tourism, and others. All our promoters have joined hands to positive energy suitable for our society and the country. In fact, we all have a keen desire to contribute for the society and the country. Nepal Institute for International Cooperation and Engagement is an independent, apolitical, and non-partisan think tank which believes in freedom, democracy, and a world free from conflict. We envision a world where sources of insecurity are identified and understood, conflicts are prevented and resolved, and peace is advocated. To start the program, may I now invite Mr. Mohan Krishna Sestha, founding president of CDD and former Nepalese Ambassador to France, to deliver welcome remarks.
Thank you, Prabodji. Namaste and good afternoon. On behalf of the Center for Diplomacy and Development and Nepal Institute of International Cooperation and Engagement, first of all, I would like to welcome all the distinguished participants and guests from home and abroad at this program. It gives us special pleasure that so many distinguished participants and scholars are attending this program. In the first part, we are going to launch a book titled Nepal's Foreign Policy and Emerging Global Issues, published by CDD. This is the first ever book published by our center. However, I assure you that it will not be the final one. For this purpose, we have invited an eminent person of Nepal, Honorable Bhekh Bahadur Thapa, as chief guest at this program. We are indeed humbled by his acceptance of our invitation. Dr. Thapa is a veteran economist and administrator, having started his career as finance secretary at the tender age of 26 years only. Later on, he also served in different high-level government positions, including Minister for Finance and Foreign Affairs, as well as Ambassador of Nepal to USA for twice, and India also. CDD and in particular myself are highly indebted to our respected chief guest, Honorable Dr. Thapa. At CDD, we have been drawing inspiration from his wise words and valuable guidance. May I also take this opportunity to extend our cordial thanks and appreciation to all the prominent scholars and writers for the contribution of articles into this book. Your hard work, intelligence, argumentative thoughts, and ideas for solving problems are highly appreciated. This book, indeed, will be a valuable asset to our society and the country. Dear participants and guests, now permit me to introduce about this book project. As an objective of CDD, we have planned to publish a book. We therefore sought the cooperation of high academicians and writers. We have collected and inserted 20 well-researched, lucid, and thought-provoking articles in this book. These papers deal with Nepal's foreign policy issues and other emerging global issues. As a non-aligned country, Nepal is at a very delicate position, needing to balance our policies between essential giants at one side and also at a global level. At the dawn of 21st century, world of today are facing innumerable challenges, from socio-economic problems to regional integration, cyber crimes, environmental and disarmament issues. Peace dividend has remained elusive as ever. Gulf between haves and have-not countries still remain as a major issue. I firmly opine that iceberg of the prosperity must do justice to the sea of poverty. Moreover, the COVID-19 is wreaking havoc all over the world, and no accurate panacea has been found yet to eliminate the virus. Such scenario at the world level demands increasing cooperation between developed and developing countries. World needs more cooperative and accommodative attitudes between countries in all continents. Confrontations must be avoided as much as possible. World cannot afford a third world war because it might cause a total devastation of men and materials of unimaginable proportions. We cannot brook any further delay to advance the work for the establishment of lasting peace and stability in the world. Moreover, I would also like to mention here that naturally beautiful country Nepal is also at a crossroad from various points of view. She is facing a formidable task of speeding economic development to meet the growing socio-economic needs of the people. As experts are saying that The interests or concerns of the powerful countries are visible in Nepal also. We must remain vigilant at each moment. Nepal is a fully non-aligned country and our foreign policy is based on the Charter of the United Nations. Our new constitution, promulgated on 20 September 2015, finally elaborate the principles and objectives of our foreign policy. Nepal cannot and does not take sides in conflicts between big or small countries. She always supports right cause and aligns with justice. Nepal seeks friendship with all and enmity with none. I am certain that those readers who take time to this book will immensely enrich themselves through excellent articles therein. May I therefore urge all of you, your friends and peers to read and enjoy this book for expanding the horizon of your thoughts on pertinent issues. With these few words, I would like to end my speech here. And before that, I once again thank all of you for your kind presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohan sir, for the welcome remarks. We'd once again like to welcome our chief guest, Dr. Bhekh Bahadur Thapa. Dr. Thapa need no introduction here in Nepal. However, those who are watching us from different parts of the world, Dr. Bhekh Bahadur Thapa is a foreign affairs expert and diplomat. He is former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Nepal. He was the fourth governor of Nepal Rastra Bank and Minister of Finance between 1976 to 1978, after serving as a State Minister of Finance and Secretary of Finance at Finance Ministry. He has served as Nepalese Ambassador to India and twice as Nepalese Ambassador to the United States of America. He also headed the National Advisory Committee for the 18th SAARC Summit that was held in Kathmandu in November 2014. Currently, he is working as EPG, Eminent Persons Group, coordinator representing Nepal on reviewing bilateral treaties between India and Nepal. May I now invite our chief guest, Dr. Bhekh Bahadur Thapa, to release the book. I'd also like to request all our participants who have received the book to show it on their webcam. We'd like to take a screenshot and share it on social media.
Very much. Here in the book. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it. I have glanced through it, and I congratulate all the writers and the publisher for bringing it to the advantage of Nepalese population, intellectuals, and all those interested in Nepal. I commend this book to all those interested in Nepal. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, here we formally come to the end of the book launch. Now we'd like to continue with the lecture on challenges of Nepal's foreign policy. At the time when two of our neighbors, India and China, are rising, both economically and militarily, there are also increasing tensions between the two. Today's topic, in this context, today's topic is of great relevance. While Nepal has signed MOU on Belt and Road Initiative with China, the Millennium Challenge Cooperation of the United States is stuck in the parliament for approval. When the SAARC is not able to accelerate, there is emergence of BIMSTEC, where Nepal is also a member. There is significant contribution by Nepal at UN peacekeeping forces. Why has Nepal failed to harness its hydropower while we have big neighbors, India and China, who are technologically advanced and have enough capital to invest? Probably today's discussion will be along these lines. So without any further ado, may I now request our distinguished guest to make a remark. Sir, you will have around 30 to 35 minutes to make your remarks, which will be followed by question and answers. We'd also like to request all our participants to drop their question in the Zoom chat room or in the comment box under Facebook Live. Dr. Thapa, the floor is yours. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jaiswal, Mr. Monsister, and all the participating friends. Thank you for inviting me. In my retirement, I was content on reflecting on the past and hoping that the next future generation will take the country towards prosperity and further advance. So I'm happy to interact with many of you and those who are seen here and even those who are not seen on the screen. I never considered myself an expert in foreign affairs. I'm accidental, and I got accidental entry into diplomacy because of circumstances prevailing at that time. I'm an economist by training. My first half of my career were devoted to central banking, Finance Ministry, and Planning Commission. And then after that, suddenly I slipped into the slippery path of diplomacy. So my experience is based on what I observed as a diplomat outside the country and briefly as a foreign minister, and also a stint with the United Nations as representative in Sri Lanka. Normally, when you ask me to talk about the foreign affairs, foreign policy of Nepal, to begin with, what is a nation? What constitutes a nation? To me, the components of nationhood are a territory, undivided, unbridged, a fixed territory. Second, recognized citizenship, the entire population of the citizen. The third part is what you might call the natural resources within the bounds of your territory. And the fourth part is participation in the rest of the world through a global mechanism, to for itself and contributing to world peace and prosperity. In a sense, and then I look at divide Nepal in three phases. One is when President Shah left Gorkha and initiated the process of, Akhanda Nepal, or, extended Nepal. That ended with the Treaty of Sugoi. The second phase I look upon as the beginning of the Rana regime, more than a century-long Rana regime. And, and then the Bhekh Bahadur also succeeded in expanding part of the Nepalese territory, which was lost by Sugoi Treaty. So the Nepal we know today is, what stopped at that time after Sipai mutinies. The Namul Liera Goreko. Then the next phase begins with the dawn of democracy in Nepal, and that continued until now. So I look upon these three phases. What I find is that what I see in that is little give and take here and there. The foreign policy of Nepal is dictated by not only Nepal's internal ambition and development, but also what has happened in the neighborhood. The Mughal Empire, then the British Empire, and then freedom, from the colonial powers. In a way, I think, it's just the history of Nepal's extended foreign policy and involvement begins with the independence of India around that time, and then emancipation from the Rana regime by the Nepalese people to gain more democratic social and economic order. Basically what I call in Nepali Naya Kalkhanda is after the dawning of democracy in Nepal. Now, I think when Prithviraj Shah talked about a yam between two stones, that became a symbol of not only Nepal's reality in terms of geopolitical and other aspects of its conduct. दुई ढुङ्गाको तरुलको सङ्केत दिएर राजा पृथ्वीनारायणले असमानताको धारणाको जन्म हुनुभन्दा अगाडिदेखि नै नेपालको अस्तित्व र सही पहिचानको अवधारणालाई दृष्टिगत गरेकोबाट त्यो बखतको वास्तविकता मात्र होइन आजको वास्तविकतालाई पनि झल्काएको छ. In saying this, basically what I'm saying is, in spite of all the changes that have taken place in Nepal, from SAARC dynasty to Rana dynasty to multiple dynasties in democratic Nepal, I think the common feature has been continuity in terms of Nepal's outlook and desire to remain aloof, independent, sovereign, and also to be a part of the larger global order. I think that started in 1951, and from there on, I think, given ups and downs by different groups or parties, whether it is the King Mahendra's Panchayat system to Gyanedra's takeover, or different parties occupying power and on different occasions, sometimes the Democratic Party, sometimes the Communist Party, sometimes the rightist parties. One thing that has remained constant is Nepal's desire to remain independent, sovereign, and prosperous country. So in a sense, I think there is a continuity in Nepal's outlook, in terms of conducting itself with the rest of the world to preserve its independent status and also advance the cause of socio-economic development. So given the rhetoric here and there, with the stress on different ideologies, for the basic thread of foreign policy has a thread of continuity. And I think that is, in a sense, that is what we see even today. But there are variations in our conduct with different countries and different groups. But the basic objective is to preserve your independent and sovereign status. On that, there has been no major compromise by either political parties or other regimes or family regime. What we have observed in the last 7 decades, Nepal has conducted itself. Now, let me revert back. Nepal's exposure to the rest of the world and impressing the rest of the world in a big way started from the Bandung Conference. During the Cold War, Nepal remained less active and in minding its internal affairs. But after Bandung, Nepal got an entry into a new landscape and horizon based on non-alignment. Suddenly, the rest of the world that didn't want to be in either camp of the Cold War found itself an expression for an accommodation in the concept of non-alignment. And I think this is where Nepal's foreign policy got major departure by not aligning with anyone, but at the same time minding its own business and following the international call for peace and prosperity without being ideologically aligned to any one of the Cold War leaders. Let me विश्वव्यापी रूपमा दोस्रो युद्धपछि शान्तिको खोजी र अर्को विश्वयुद्ध नहोस् भन्ने धारणालाई अगाडि बढाएर संयुक्त राष्ट्रसङ्घ मात्र होइन अन्य संस्थागत विकासबाट संरचना गरिएका संरचनाहरूमा सहभागी हुन नेपालले छोडेन, तत्कालै सहभागीको रूपमा देखा पर्यो। विदेश नीति भनिन्छ राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थको एक अभिन्न अङ्ग हो। यो सोचाइबाट हेर्दा नेपालको विदेश नीतिमा राज्य सञ्चालनको विभिन्न अनुभवको बावजुद नेपालले अपनाएको नीतिमा धेरै निरन्तरताको अंश पाइन्छ। भौगोलिक वास्तविकताले दुई छिमेकीको बीच सन्तुलनता कायम गर्नुपर्ने र बाँकी विश्वसँग अरू कसैको स्वार्थतिर असंलग्न रही निष्पक्ष सोचाइको आधारमा संलग्नता र पृथक सोचाइ राखेको देखिन्छ। सम्बन्धको आधार निरन्तर निश्चित रहँदैन र आफ्नो धारणा अनि छिमेकीको धारणा त्यसपछि बाँकी विश्वको अवधारणालाई गहिरो अध्ययन र विश्लेषण गरेर राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थलाई केन्द्रबिन्दु बनाएर राज्य सञ्चालन गर्ने पाटोलाई विदेश नीतिको संज्ञा दिइन्छ। विदेश नीतिको आधारमा पहिलो सोचाइको केन्द्र राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थ नै हो। त्यसपछि छिमेकी जोसँग सहकार्य अनिवार्य छ तिनीहरूको स्वार्थ र आफ्नो स्वार्थ कहाँ मेल खान्छ भन्ने कुरा विश्लेषण र तेस्रो पक्षमा बाँकी विश्व र अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय संस्थाहरूको सहभागिता रहन्छ। आजको परिवर्तनशील विश्वमा अरूको राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थ कहाँ छ र त्यो आफ्नो राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थसँग मेल खान्छ खाँदैन त्यसको गहिरो र निरन्तर अध्ययन अनिवार्य छ। यो सबै प्रक्रियालाई परिपालन गर्न केवल कूटनैतिक तह मात्र होइन सचेष्ट नागरिकहरूको पनि भूमिकाको बाध्यता छ। आजको विश्वमा घटेका घटनाहरूलाई हेर्दा दोस्रो विश्वयुद्धपछि बनेका संरचनाहरू बिस्तारै कम प्रभावशाली र अपर्याप्त देखिँदैछन्। त्यसलाई सम्बोधन गर्ने माध्यमको रूपमा संयुक्त राष्ट्रसङ्घ र त्यसै प्रकारका अन्य संरचनाहरूको प्रभावकारिताको बारेमा प्रश्न उठेको मात्र होइन मध्यपूर्व लगायत अन्य ठाउँमा देखिँदै गएको अस्थिरता र भिडन्तले गर्दा मानव जातिलाई एउटा नयाँ चुनौतीको अवस्थामा पुर्याएको छ। हिजो शीत युद्धको बेलामा दुई शक्तिशाली राष्ट्रहरूको तनावले विश्वलाई नै अगालेको थियो। आज हिजोको केन्द्रहरू कम प्रभावशाली बन्दै र आन्तरिक र बाह्य समस्याहरूमा प्रभावकारी भूमिका त्यति सबल रहेको उदाहरण देखिँदैछन्। विश्वका विभिन्न भाग र खास गरी मध्यपूर्वमा निरन्तर सङ्घर्ष र मानव जातिको क्षतिको समाचार व्याप्त छ। यी सबै घटनाले पुरानो विश्वव्यापी संस्था वर्ल्ड अर्डरले हाँक्न नसकेका चुनौतीहरूलाई र नयाँ चुनौतीहरूलाई पनि विकल्पको रूपमा नयाँ अवधारणा न्यू वर्ल्ड अर्डरको खोजीमा विश्व अग्रसर हुँदैछ तर विकल्पको देखिने लक्षण अझ बढी चुनौती देखा पर्दैछ। यो सबै वास्तविकताले गर्दा विश्वव्यापी रूपमा परराष्ट्र नीतिको सान्दर्भिकता एकातिर राष्ट्रिय हितसँग जोडिएको छ भने अर्कोतिर वैचारिक होस् आर्थिक होस् सामाजिक होस् या मानवीय होस् विश्व शान्ति कायम गर्ने अभियान ज्यादै चुनौतीपूर्ण देखिएको छ। विदेश नीति राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थसँग अलग हुन सक्दैन तापनि साङ्गरिक विश्वमा एक्लै कसैले पनि आफ्नो प्रभुत्व जमाउन सक्दैन र भएकाहरू पनि कमजोर हुँदै गएको दृष्टान्त देखिएको छ। यी सहकार्य गर्न माध्यमको वैचारिक र संस्थागत संरचनाको खोजी जताततै देखिँदैछ। यी सबै कुराहरूलाई दृष्टिगत गर्दा नेपालको विदेश नीतिमा परम्परादेखि देखिएको सन्तुलनता र बदलिँदो छिमेक र विश्वमा भएका गतिविधिलाई दृष्टिगत गरी आफू जोगिने र नागरिकको हक हित र प्रगतिको आधार सिर्जना गर्ने र बाँकी विश्वसँग सहअस्तित्वको आधारमा सक्रिय रहने यिनै कुराहरूबाट नेपालको विदेश नीति आजसम्म सञ्चालन भएको र भविष्यको लागि पनि मार्गदर्शनको रूपमा रहेको देखिन्छ। विदेश नीतिको बारेमा कुरा गर्दा आज विश्वव्यापी रूपमा जुन प्रकारका घटना र संरचनाहरू बनेका छन् त्यसलाई हेर्दा नौलो किसिमको निरङ्कुशताको प्रादुर्भाव हुँदै गएको देखिन्छ, जहाँ प्रजातान्त्रिक माध्यमलाई अँगालेर सत्ता प्राप्त गरेपछि देखिन थालेको निरङ्कुशता र संविधान लगायत अन्य उदार विचारधाराको व्यवस्था गरेर निरङ्कुश राज्य सञ्चालन गरेका उदाहरणहरू पर्दापण हुँदैछन्। त्यसलाई पनि हामीले ध्यानमा राख्नुपर्ने देखिन्छ। विदेश नीतिको बारेमा विचार गर्दा आफ्नो अस्तित्व र भूमिकालाई विवादित रहित राख्नको लागि निरन्तर सतर्क रही लगनशील हुनुपर्ने बाध्यता हुन्छ। बाह्य जगतसँग सम्बन्ध राख्दा आफ्नो संरक्षण मात्र होइन, आजको बदलिँदो परिस्थिति र वास्तविकतासँग परिचित रहनुपर्ने चुनौती छ। विदेश नीति राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थको अभिनव हो भन्ने कुरा मैले अघि पनि भने। त्यसको लागि आन्तरिक राज्य र सामाजिक सञ्चालनको प्रक्रियामा राष्ट्रहितको सोचाइमा आन्तरिक एकताबाट प्राप्त हुने दूरदृष्टिबाट निर्देशित हुनु आवश्यक अनिवार्य छ। त्यसमा नेपाल त्यति अग्रसर भएको र बढी कमजोर भएको पनि उदाहरणहरू छन्। यो धारणाबाट विदेश नीतिको सञ्चालन राष्ट्रिय स्वार्थको अङ्ग हो भन्ने कुरा पनि सीमित छ। अन्तमा अहिले विश्वमा घटेका घटनाहरूलाई हेर्दाखेरि नयाँ समीकरणको खोजी, नयाँ सिद्धान्तमा सहभागी गराउने प्रयत्नदेखि लिएर अन्य चलखेलहरू बढी भएको छ। शीत युद्धमा दुई देशको प्रभुत्व थियो, अहिले धेरै देशको प्रभुत्व र नयाँ प्रभुत्व हाँक्न सक्ने देशहरूको पनि उदयमान हुँदैछ। हाम्रै दुईटै छिमेकीहरू पनि त्यसको हाराहारीमा पुगेको या त्यो कुराको चाहिँ यसको चाहिँ प्राप्ति गर्नको लागि लगनशील रहेको पनि देखिन्छ। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि अहिलेको परिस्थिति एक प्रकारले ज्यादै तरल छ। It's a very fluid situation as it is happening. Daily events are worrisome and concerning. And the divide between rich and poor is increasing. The rich are as capable and as rich as they were yesterday. The poor are asking for more. But the tragic events of the influx of refugees from different parts of the world and the plight that they are facing, and this combined with the challenge of the economic advance by the rich and the poor alike, I think is creating a new environment within which we as a nation should continue with our effort to remain independent and sovereign, but at the same time save ourselves from the encroachment, from the aggressive behavior of others, either in the neighborhood or beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we'd like to open the floor for discussion. It was really enlightening lecture, sir. So we thank you for
sorry, I was my preparation was slightly different. So I
the first question we have received is that how do you look at the MCC? Why Nepal has not been able to get it approved in the parliament?
Well, I'm somewhat confused on this issue, because what kind of a country are we that sends its minister to sign the document before completing the process of endorsement? In a sense, I think I'm the अब पहिले सही गर्ने त्यसपछि गएर चाहिँ अनुमोदन गर्ने। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ नि यो विवादमा चाहिँ तानिएको कारण यहाँ हाम्रो राजनैतिक एकाइहरूको बिचमा भएको खिचातानीले मात्र होइन, यसको प्रक्रिया नै एक प्रकारले हेर्दाखेरि चाहिँ नि सही प्रक्रियाबाट अगाडि बढेन। एउटा त्यो कुरो छ। अर्को कुरो चाहिँ यस्तो कुरोमा सिग्नेचर गर्नुभन्दा अगाडि पार्लियामेन्ट्री एप्रुभलदेखि लिएर हरेक पार्टीहरूसँग सम्बन्धदेखि लिएर बौद्धिक समुदायलाई पनि विश्वासमा लिएर छलफल राष्ट्रिय तहको छलफल नभइकन अहिलेको विश्व खास गरेर हेर्नुहुन्छ भने जुन प्रकारको चाहिँ नयाँ चाहिँ शक्ति केन्द्रको लागि अब खोजी मात्र होइन प्रयत्न हरेक हिजोका ठुला शक्तिशाली राष्ट्रहरूले प्रयत्नशील भएका छन्। त्यसमा कति उनीहरूको स्वार्थ छ, कति अरू हाम्रो स्वार्थ त्यसमा भित्र पर्छ कि पर्दैन भन्ने कुरोको अध्ययन नगरिकन पहिले गएर चाहिँ नि ज्ञानजीले सही गरेर आउनुभयो। अब पछि गएर हाम्रो चाहिँ नि स्क्रुटिनीको प्रोसेस सुरु भयो। त्यसले ल्याएको चाहिँ गम्भीरता एउटा गम्भीर प्रश्न छ। त्यसले गर्दाखेरि अप्ठ्यारोपन मात्र होइन, नेपाल अमेरिकाको सम्बन्धमा एक प्रकारले सम्भावनालाई अँगालेर अगाडि बढ्नुको सट्टा यो खोजी नीतिको र अध्ययनको कमीले गर्दाखेरि विवादमा परेको छ। यो चाहिँ दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण कुरा हो।
So the next question we have is on Belt and Road. How much Nepal has signed the MOU on Belt and Road initiative three years ago. However, Nepal has not been able to achieve much in last 3 years. So how do you look at BRI? Will it benefit Nepal?
We're talking about, well, here again, I think the stress, China as a country looks way beyond, it has history from the long march to look to long big wall to everything else. In a sense, I think the component that opens China and links it with not only neighbors, but beyond is a very visionary approach. Each country involved in that exercise, use of territory or trade and other mechanism, I think, has to look at it. Here, once again, I think we are into it, but the speed with which that can be implemented, I think in a sense, the connectivity aspect is something a landlocked Nepal should welcome. But other components of it, I think, to what extent there is a hidden objectives that has to be deciphered before we move into it. But then we're already in it. I think we have to be selective in terms of implementing different aspects of it.
We have one Indian scholar asking, how do you look at India-Nepal relation in recent times? In last 10 years, how do you evaluate the relation between two countries?
In my own career, I've seen ups and downs in relations. As very close neighbors with open border, with the openness all around. The relation between Nepal and India cannot be compared easily with anyone else. But at the same time, we have faced 3 blockades. And, we embarked, I remember, I think the 1950 treaty that was signed by the departing or ousted Prime Minister, Rana Prime Minister, in that political circumstance, has become a subject of controversy between India and Nepal ever since, even before the ink was dry on the document. I think there have been, in terms of Nepal-India relation, as I said, is close, but I think it needs a rethinking about the structure envisaged when India was newly independent and Nepal was free of Rana regime. I think so. Whatever the Nepalese intellectuals have talked of equality, equal responsive relationship based on equality, and but for the ongoing controversy, including some exercise here and there, I remember, it's this, when Lal Bahadur Shastri became Prime Minister and came to Nepal, King Mahendra looked at the three of us who were there in the room, Kedarnath Kanal, myself, and King Mahendra said, I think I can work with this man because he has a very open mind about the future and positive outlook towards bilateral relation. Then, I was ambassador when I.K. Gujral was Prime Minister. I.K. Gujral talked about non-reciprocal behavior between India and neighbors. That didn't last long because it reverted back with the exit of Gujral. Modi ji became Prime Minister. He came to Kathmandu and he gave a lecture and in our Constituent Assembly that pleased every Nepali because he showed the degree of openness. But then suddenly, soon thereafter, in all these three phases, what was spoken by political leaders became irrelevant. And continuity was based on the document signed and the outlook by Indian authorities based on that, based on their interpretation of the document. So I think, this up and down has not served Nepal and India as well. But then at the people's level, the openness with which people transact, communicate, and deal with each other, I think is a very most important feature of relation between India and Nepal. And to what extent we can maintain that aspect of relation intact and at the same time deal with other issues that have risen for a variety of reasons, including trafficking, smuggling, and criminal activities to everything else. So the border is no longer free because the border security force from India are almost in the entire region. Nepal doesn't have the capacity or hasn't taken initiative to control the border. But both sides need to look at how to clear the atmosphere of distrust based on past thinking and move towards positive direction. From that point of view, the two prime ministers, KPO Sharma Oli and Modi ji in India, when Modi ji came here and Oli ji visited India, the Eminent Persons Group was established to look at various aspects of Indo-Nepal relation. I and Koshyari ji, who is now Governor of Rastra in India, were given charge of that exercise. The report has been prepared more than 2 years ago. It is lying idle. And, in a sense, it was a search for moving away from the rigidities of the past towards a more, acceptable order to both without encroaching on the relationship that has to remain friendly and open. So anyway, I think some changes have been on the way, but not enough attention is being paid on the improvement aspect.
Thank you, sir. We have received lots of questions
Okay.
on what you just mentioned about EPG. If you're allowed to comment, what is the status of EPG report and why it has been stuck at the Indian Prime Minister's desk for 2 years?
Well, that is the question, I'm unable to answer because, to begin with, it is one report, not two reports, not the India report or not Nepal report. It's a joint exercise, and there is a consensus of, what goes in the way of suggestion. But, in spite of that, in spite of all that has transpired, since then, 8 of us sat at the end of the meeting more than 2 years ago and said this will usher Nepal-India relation to a new height. I do not have the liberty of dealing with the components of the report because it is the property of the 2 prime ministers, and they have to decide on when to accept it and what to do with it. I am at a loss to explain why there has been delay, but every time Nepal and India meet at a political level, be it the prime minister's level or the foreign minister's level or foreign secretary level, this issue has come up. And in a sense, I think it is sort of, we're waiting patiently. The only thing I can say is, unless and until we deal with some of the issues that the report deals with, Nepal-India relation will blow hot and cold, simultaneously on issues, from very past to present.
Let me move to the next question. As you have stated that Nepal has traditionally geared its foreign policy towards keeping neutrality and not intervening in regional and international affairs. However, with the increasing influence of China is showcasing in the region, and there is which also clashes with Indian interest, and all these recent developments, can Nepal expect to be neutral in the long run?
It's up to us. I think, if you place your national interest at the core of your analysis, and what will help and what will not help, I think if our conclusion is based on larger national interest. I think the word neutral is, not at the middle between right and wrong. It is between your interest and the interest of outsiders. So to the extent they are compatible, we should jump into it. To the extent it conflicts, we should negotiate and try to come for a compromise. And basically because, I think the term neutrality is not the middle of everything.
So there's another question on water resources. Like Nepal is the second richest in water resources, and it has huge potential. In spite of being that, like why Nepal has failed to harness its water resources with the help of India or China or both?
Well, I think this is a topic where, from the time Nepal started on the path of economic development, the utilization of water resources, Nepal's need, what goes out and how it goes out, what can be done in between to harness energy or to cultivate land and all that, has been debated now for more than 70 years. We signed a Pancheshwar agreement, which was hailed as an exemplary project by both sides, but the implementation side has been not only lacking, but is way behind, and there are more questions than answers. The point is, any surplus water that flows from Nepalese territory to India cannot remain undefined or undefined or it requires dialogue, cooperation, and a framework of understanding. We started on that process. Few things have been done, but they are small in scale. The big projects are in the offing. They are being studied. Engineering details are, and economic feasibility is being conducted. but we are lacking in our resolve to look for a agreeable solution that makes it win-win for both countries. And I say it has proven to be much more challenging. And as I said, some progress has been made, but they are too little, too late. I think this will be the agenda for the future. Hopefully, the outlook on both in Kathmandu and New Delhi will be broad-based rather than narrow, self-interest based.
Sir, we have another question on border issues. There are lots of questions related to India-Nepal border issues. I'm trying to club them. How do you look at how Nepal can diplomatically resolve the issue of Kalapani and Nipulek that can improve the relation between Nepal and India?
Well, I think in a sense, after after the constitution was amended to include that territory as being part of Nepal, I think we in Nepal look upon that as being the answer. But then, I think similar exercise has gone into India. There's a degree of high-handedness in terms of implementing projects without adequate consultation. This has created a very difficult situation, and it calls for much more skilled diplomacy and accommodation by both sides. I think no government or no parliament has the power to give its right of territory. So in a sense, we're constitutionally constrained to stay the course. But in the meantime, the dialogue at the political and security level, must be pursued to arrive at an agreeable solution. I think, it's just, what is happening in a sense, I think has led to an impasse and stubborn pursuit of, construction and other developments that cannot be condoned.
So the next question is on Nepal-US relation. There is a perception in Nepal that in recent times, United States has been increasing its presence in Nepal, or its interest is growing in Nepal. Do you agree to that? If yes, what is the reason behind
it? I didn't quite get the question.
There is a perception in Nepal that the presence of the United States or the interest of United States is increasing in Nepal. So what might be the reason behind it?
Well, from my perspective, having dealt with India for 8 years as ambassador, America's interest, as is true of other countries, is based on its own national interest. It is a global power. Therefore, it looks at everything from the perspective of not only what is good for America, but also what might prevent America's competitors from gaining ground in different parts of the world. I would take it with a pinch of salt, the thesis that America's influence has grown. Whether you look at, except for the MCA, which is a sort of big investment project, America's interest in Nepal was extremely limited to watching our northern border and movements in that area, and large concerns like human rights and other issues, democracy, human rights, and other issues. So in a sense, I think America's interest was limited, remains limited, except for MC, which now is under question. But to say that America's influence has increased may not be as adequate, as appropriate as it is being said.
There's another question like, why has Nepal failed to look beyond India and China in last 3 decades? Apart from India and China, whom do you think are the important players that can help Nepal in its economic development?
Well, I think our interest lies in maintaining good and workable and advantageous relationship with our 2 neighbors. Beyond that, I think the power centers, the economic powers of the world, and international institutions with economic capability, I think it is in that order that we should pursue our interest. Just because somebody is powerful in in terms of weapon capability and other things, I think that should not be our concern. But I think our interest lies in pursuing what we have been doing for the last few years by maintaining workable relation with all the countries in the world, and with the emphasis on economically prosperous countries for technological and economic gain. I think what we have been doing, in a sense, is represents continuity of our interest, and I think that should continue.
We have another question on economic diplomacy that, like, in spite of Nepal being between 2 big giants of Asia, India and China, why Nepal has not been able to harness the potential in terms of economy? Because Nepal, while India and China has emerged as the world's largest economy, why Nepal has failed to benefit from these 2 countries?
Well, it's just what Nepal wants is different from what is happening in some areas. Basically, I think economic diplomacy is not a new term. We have been pursuing that ever since we opened up by getting help from the United States, India, China, and different countries for the construction of road to many other projects. I think the choice for a small, poor country like Nepal is limited. But then, we haven't done badly in terms of interacting with the rest of the world, economically and otherwise. You're saying something? Yeah. Now, my feeling is that, it's, our relation with the rest of the world, the economic diplomacy has a sizable place. And it was earlier, it was, and it continues to be, that way. So from the fact that things aren't happening, let's not also forget the fact that we went through People's War for almost 2 decades. The conflict and the difficulty created by that, and the way the rest of the world looked at us was different then. And now that we have achieved our own peace, I think things may look different. But we have not been able, I think this People's War, the conflict, diverted not only our attention of the rest of the world from economic development to helping protect Nepal's as a democratic nation. I think that has bitten into other possibilities that might have been successful. Now that we have our peace, we have a democratic regime in order. Hopefully, it will be more durable than we have seen in the last few days. I think things probably will change. But the stress on economic diplomacy was there before and continues to be now. But the world is slightly different today than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I think we must recognize the changes and create an environment for prosperity by remaining, not only peaceful, but also oriented towards development.
So there's another question on Nepal-China. How do you look at Nepal-China relations? Apart from Tibet issue, what might be China's interest in Nepal?
Well, I think, China is no longer the China of 50 years ago or 30 years ago. It has an outreach now to the rest of the world, and it is trying to become one of the superpower in the emerging world. From that point of view, relation with China has remained over the last 7 decades steady and equilibrium at a low level. Things have happened, but not as much. No major project, but small projects here and there. From there now, I think we're coming to China's initiative in terms of the Belt and Road, not only in Nepal but also with the rest of the world. It is reaching out to the rest of the world. So things have changed. Not as much in Nepal, but more in China. China's outlook, China's role in the international agencies with the rest of the world. So if China is very aggressive in Africa, Latin America, and other places, it cannot be, it cannot leave its neighbors behind. From that point of view, I expect China to play a greater role than it has played so far. And for that, we also need to create an environment conducive for China, enhancing China's interest in economic and economic development.
So we're running out of time. We still have lots of questions. So let me put 3-4 more questions and we'll end the program. The next question is that Nepal received huge amount of aid from different friendly countries, donor countries. In spite of that, why Nepal has failed to speed up its development?
Well, I think, it's just, we're all witness to it. We're all seeing the same scenario. I think long political and social agitation, the difficulties imposed by being landlocked, gradually we're overcoming it. But, the geographical conditions are not very conducive to rapid growth. But in spite of that, I submit that we haven't done badly, except during the conflict era, when large-scale development or asking the rest of the world to do more to us, in development, I think was limited. Why it hasn't happened? The reality is before us. We have not been able to embark on major projects related to water, irrigation, or industrialization as a landlocked country. The constraints imposed by lack of road and lack of communication. But we are only gradually overcoming that. And to say that, things could have been better is saying the obvious. But to say that nothing has happened or what is happening is too little may not also be a reflection of reality.
So the last question for today. Recently, United States has floated the idea of Indo-Pacific strategy for free and fair Indo-Pacific. Do you think Nepal should join the Indo-Pacific strategy? If yes, what benefits will it achieve?
Well, again, I think we dealt with this issue a little earlier, in terms of American-Nepal relationship. I remember a long time ago when King Birendra paid a state visit to America, going to SINPAC in Honolulu and being exposed to the horizon of their thinking in terms of how a superpower deals with the rest of the world. SINPAC had a political agenda. What we need to be careful is to what extent, in whatever deal we enter into, whether there's enough safeguard for our interest and how we protect others' influence being a central part of it. That my feeling is that the homework was not done adequately, and taking intelligentsia into confidence and share with the population the good and bad aspects of MCI, I think was not done, and that probably has cost us in terms of wasted time and wasted opportunity. Because the scale of investment of $500 million, that's too large for Nepal in relation to what America has been doing in Nepal, from earlier on until now. So inadequate homework has led to a difficulty that has sort of retarded progress on that front. Here, once again, I think it is for the authority and the intelligence in Nepal to look at components of it and see whether there is any other motive other than pure development. And I think that exercise awaits us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the interesting and comprehensive discussion. We learned a lot. I'm sure our participants also benefited from it. Finally, to propose vote of thanks, I'd like to request Mr. Mitra Bandhu Paudel, Vice President of CDT, to deliver the vote of thanks, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Pramodji. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Dr. Bhekh Bahadur Thapa, the former Foreign and Finance Minister and the former Ambassador of Nepal to the US and India, Mr. Mohan Krishna Shrestha, President, Center for Diplomacy and Development, former Ambassador of Nepal to France, and the co-editor of the book, Nepal's Foreign Policy and Emerging Global Trends, all the distinguished scholars, participants, journalists, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the organizing committee, I extend sincere gratitude to Dr. Bhekh Bahadur Thapa, the keynote speaker of today's webinar, for unveiling the book edited by Mohan Krishna Shrestha, Pramod Jaiswal, and Mitra Bandhu Paudel. Thank you, sir, for highlighting the essence of our foreign policy. And a few takeaway I got from your presentation was there should be firm debate and transparent process prior to signing any formal documents, including MCC and BRI. When we look at the world order, strange type of authoritarian regime seems to be emerging in the form of cosmetic democracy. To combat trafficking of drugs and human, both countries, especially Nepal and India, should work together. And your remarks on EPG report was very, I like that very much, because EPG report is a joint report and it is the property of two countries. Dialogue must be pursued to the agreeable solution in the issue of border disputes. So these are a few takeaways I found from Dr. Thapa. Similarly, I would like to thank Ambassador Mohan Krishna Shrestha, the President of Center for Diplomacy and Development, leading our think tank with full of energy and enthusiasm. Thank you, sir. This book that unveiled today would not have been published without the contribution of our valuable scholars, including Ganga Thapa, Joel R. Campbell, Parmit Kajal, Aditi Paul, Sangeet Sarita Dwivedi, Anup Sekhar Chakravarti, Paul Antonopoulos, Drew Kottel and Sunil Thapa, similarly Binod Kumar Singh, Vishakha Shrestha and Steffi V. Joseph, Karnika Jain, Oinam Ghanashyam Khumancha, Sumin Lee, Hoimonti Barua, Anehi Mundra, Chandralal Pandey, Jacqueline Joseph and Sovit Chepe, Doku Naga Maleswara Rao, Dechun Jiang, Swati Singh, and Subham Karmakar. Thank you so much for your remarkable contribution for this book. This book is a joint publication of Center for Diplomacy and Development, Kathmandu, and GB Books, New Delhi. We would like to thank Gaurav Batra of GB Books for providing all assistance and support for publishing the book. On behalf of the editors, note that they have sole responsibility for the work being original. I thank NICE for providing this platform today. Let me thank all the participants for listening passionately throughout the webinar. And I finally thank Dr. Pramod Jaiswalji for his wonderful moderation. Thank you very much.